Okay, so we've talked a lot about the writing process and the submission process and all the different avenues you've got, but I know you in particular, and this is partly why I chose you for this interview, have a heck of a lot more going on than just the creative and the submission side of it. You have got a system whereby you keep track of a lot of information. So could you describe to me, you mentioned early on something about having statistical data on last year and what percentage of your songs got forwarded and all that. Yeah. Could you tell me a little bit more about the type of information you keep track
Sure.
of?
Yeah, by day I'm a web developer. That's my my job, and my background from college. I'm actually a math degree with physics minor, so I'm very detail oriented. The geek, the nerdy in high school. That's what I was. So when I first started with Taxi, I would, there were so many listings. I'm like, I could probably do this, I could probably do that. So I would, I'd go on the 1st and I'd go on the 15th and I'd scour through the listings and I'd copy into a Word document every listing that I thought I had something either already finished or at that point in time that I wanted to try to write for. And over the course of months and months of doing that, I started to develop more of an actual process where now, I actually will have more of a spreadsheet that I'm keeping up with where I'll put in, okay, here's the song, here's the due date, and then it goes into more of like a calendar mode. So I'll go out and I'll look, okay, this is when it's due. Okay, I've got to write it, I got to track it, I got to pocket it, I got to mix it, and I got to master it. I got 5 steps that I got to go through. Here's the deadline, work backwards. Okay, now can I mix it and master it on this day, and I'll track it and I'll write it. And a lot of for me is when I'm tracking, I'm usually writing at the same time. I'll usually combine those 2 steps and try to do that as much as possible because I do more instrumental stuff. Even when I'm writing songs with co-writers, I typically just do the tracks. I do get involved with the lyrics later on in the process, but in the beginning, typically, with the majority of my co-writers, I will just create a track and I'll send it to them, and we'll go from there. So that's like step 1. Okay, the next step is I got a spreadsheet printed out. Looks a little bit like this, just to give you a little glimpse.
You can hold it up to the camera there.
Yeah.
Raise it up a little higher. There we go, folks. All right.
So there's just a little glimpse of it.
There's a real, true, real-life spreadsheet from Barry French, right?
So this is back from December of last year. And so I've got Monday through Friday because I have a day job. So I can only work on this stuff in the evening. So basically I've got from 5 to midnight Monday through Friday, and then I've got from 10 to midnight Saturday and Sunday. So I'll go through and I'll schedule out, okay, what are things that I know I have going on that week? Okay, I'm a huge Kentucky basketball fan. Those always get penciled in. I work around those. I put time with my wife in there, and there are certain TV shows that I just love. So I do that. Then I go through and like, this day I've got to write, this day I got to mix, this day I got to master. So I go through and figure out what time of the night or day that I can work on this stuff. And I did that, and that's when I started seeing my forward ratio actually get increased because I was focused.
Right.
And back earlier, I was focused, but I wasn't as focused. And I was just trying to do so many different listings. And I realized I was spreading myself too thin because you just, as much as you want to do, I wanted to do every listing I possibly could. So I would have like this many, column this deep of all the listings I'm wanting to submit to.
Right.
And now it's more like this because I'm with these deals that I've gotten, I'm writing more for my library opportunities, and
Okay, so you actually are technically submitting to less listings. Is that what I'm hearing? But your forward ratio is actually getting better across the board as far as your songs go and your submissions.
It did at the end of last year. This year, the forward ratio is a little bit lower than it was last year. But that's probably because I have submitted to less listings.
Right. Yeah. So the next question is, you mentioned that you've got this spreadsheet that tells you from a timeline perspective when things are due, and you have work back from there. It's basically project management.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Yep.
And then you've got this calendar as far as your time goes and when you've got time to devote to the process. I think I heard you mention something about on a given song basis, you've got data on how many times it's been submitted, how many forwards you've gotten, and all that stuff. Is that right?
Yep. I have another spreadsheet that keeps up with every time I submit something because, I'm submitting to multiple different avenues, not just Taxi, some other places as well. And I want to know, especially with my recent library deal that I got, the one I got through Taxi, part of their process is you're not allowed to submit a song twice. if you submit a duplicate song, they'll delete the folder that you submitted in it.
For a given listing?
Well, it's kind of an open-ended policy with them. Since I've got the deal with them, they're like, okay, anytime you want to submit material to us, feel free. You can submit it on an ongoing basis. But if you submit a song that you've already sent to them that they may not have liked the first time and you redid it, they'll delete that whole folder.
Gotcha.
So I thought I've got to make sure I keep up with everything. So that way I can keep up and say, all right, this day I submitted these songs, and if they get forwarded, then I'll go back and I'll put them in bold or whatever, and so put the company it was forwarded to, so I can keep up with all that stuff.
Gotcha. Wow, that's a lot of data tracking. But it sounds to me like you treat this like a job.
It is a job.
It's a career.
It is.
And you do the same things that you do in your day job to keep track of all the various aspects of your projects that you're working on there to make money from.
I know there's probably going to be people who are listening to this or watching this, and they're probably thinking, "Oh my gosh, that's so much work." And it is. It is a lot of work, and I feel blessed that my natural tendencies are this type of detailed work. With my job, that's helped so much. Being a web developer, I can build my own website. I can do database analysis because I do that for a day job.
Right. You do realize these are like the total antithesis of the creative person's tendencies.
Yep.
Now you're lucky that you've got both worlds covered.